My name is Doug Rush, and I'm an assistant professor at St. Louis University in the College of Education, where I teach graduate research and statistics courses.
Okay. So you wrote this op-ed in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Can you talk briefly about what you wrote?
All right. I'd like to start out by saying that I'm not an economist. All right, I'm an educator. My concern and my motivation for writing the article is that all states, or most states, including Missouri, have been dramatically reducing the funding to their higher education systems. We are preparing, I guess, in this most recent legislative special session, which has just been called, to consider somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 million to allocate to building an Aerotropolis. At the same time, the funding that Missouri spends on its higher education system, and I'm talking about the state system, not private system, has dropped to 47th per capita in the nation. If we are to compete, my belief is, if we are to compete in what is now clearly a global economy, the only way that we can compete is with education. We're not going to compete building warehouses and trying to attract cargo to those warehouses. We have to spend our state funds in building up what we do best in education, because it's going to take education to compete in the global economy.
Well, proponents say if you build up the Aerotropolis, that will encourage international trade and perhaps create jobs for which there's then a demand for higher skilled education. Do you see this as putting the horse before the cart before the horse, or?
Well, I at least see it as being unproven and potentially unlikely. And as I pointed out in the article, all you need to do is go across the river to the Mid-America Airport, which NBC News has twice highlighted in The Fleecing of America. The federal and state governments spent $300 million to build an airport over there. No passengers fly in or out of the airport. Little or no cargo is delivered or picked up, and it just sits there. On the other hand, the state higher education system is a proven economy. The U.S. Department of Education and the Census Bureau just came out with a report on 2009 and 2010. And that report showed that almost 60% of all of the students in the United States who got doctorate degrees in engineering were foreign students, international students, who came to take part in our education system and then take that knowledge back to their home country. 55% of the students who got PhDs in computer science came from international students, and 50% of all our math and statistics PhDs are international students who are coming to America to experience our education system and then taking that knowledge home to their country to make them better able to compete. How much longer they'll be willing to do that if we continue to gut our systems, and how are we going to train our own students to be competitive if we don't spend the money in higher education?
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand you. Are you saying that the 50% or so of international students then taking knowledge back to their home country is problematic, or just that you wish more American students were taking advantage of that system?
I'm not saying it's problematic. I think it's a symptom of the problem in the United States right now, where our own students are being far outnumbered by students who are taking that knowledge and going home to compete against us. There's good news and bad news in it. The good news is a lot of people still think we've got a great higher education system. The bad news is they're taking that knowledge and going home, and our students should far outnumber the foreign students. This is not being jingoistic or suggesting that we don't want to let them in. We're just saying, or I'm just saying, that we need to make sure our higher education system stays appropriately funded so that we do have the best higher education system, and that we direct our students into those programs.
So one of the things that politicians really like about tax credits is it's not spending. It's just,
It's spending light.
And can you explain that?
Again, I'm not an economist, I'm not a tax specialist, but tax credits usually come about where if there are a certain amount of expenditures being made, you can offset those expenditures with taxes that are owed.
And why does that bother you in relation to higher education?
I'm not saying it bothers me within relationship to higher education, but if we take $300 million tax dollars that could be collected, right, and don't give it away, that's $300 million that can be reallocated to other priorities in the state of Missouri. Whether those priorities happen to be health, whether they happen to be roads, or whether they happen to be higher education system, that's where those dollars could be. Now, on the other hand, developers may say, well, without the credit, we won't build the warehouses, the cargo won't arrive, and no taxes would be paid. If that's the case, it's probably that the underlying concept is not economically viable. If you have to get the credit, get the money from the state to build the system, is it something that is going to be worthwhile and lasting, or is it just going to be money that's spent to help build some warehouses? Plus, I think I read one of the, I might be wrong about this, but I think one provision of the proposed Aerotropolis bill calls for payment of money per kilo of cargo carried, which is a direct payment rather than a tax credit, at least as I think I saw in the bill.
It's a credit that's issued, per kilo.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't thought about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the more you carry, the more you get paid by the state. And that's more of a direct payment than perhaps a credit.